Welcome to this week's Patron exclusive episode. I keep saying this week's. It's not this week's. It's the 15th of the month Patron exclusive episode. I'm going to apologize in advance that I was playing with makeup before I came in here. I look like a clown that got punched, and I don't have time to take it off, so... Are you ready to hear me mispronounce like 1,000 French words? Because I'm sure ready to get this over with. I picked this one and it sounds like it's so interesting, but it takes place in France and my French is not what it used to be. So, let's just dive right in because I don't know how well this is going to work. Obviously, I'm still recording on my phone, tried to figure out how to edit it. And you know what? At the end of this, whatever, maybe that's just my shtick. Maybe I'm not editing because I don't know how. Or maybe it's just that's my thing. I just give you unedited, awful content. Maybe that's my thing. That's my shtick. I'm just au naturel, Janny over here giving you the true crime business. It's like an episode of Live PD, except I'm telling you the story. Something to consider. Tell me your thoughts. So today I'm still wearing my jammies, so don't judge me, but look what I found. Okay, I found it. 13 trips to Target later, I found it. That's all that matters. So today we're going to be talking about, so her nickname is Monvoisin. That's not her real name, so I'm going to go back and forth. Her real name was Catherine, but I kind of go back and forth between the issue here is that there's a ton of nicknames of people, and all their names are in French. So I try to explain where these people fit in, and it's sometimes really kind of confusing, but I try to do the best I can to, so I understand it. So hopefully I did enough research that, you can understand it, because if you don't, then that's just silly, and then where are we going to be, right? So, she was born Catherine de Chaise in 1640, which is a hard estimate. So, I told you, we're doing an old-timey crime, which is my favorite type of crimes. And really, she's not technically, she might be a serial killer. Unconfirmed. It's just something that I stumbled upon, and I found this so interesting that I'm like, you know what? I'm sharing this with my friends. So, okay, she was born Catherine de Chaise in 1640, in Villeneuve-sur-Gravois. Paris, France, which, I was trying to Google that area, and the only person that ever comes up is Catherine, is Monvoisin. So she must have apparently, we're back to this again of how can I do this without you guys seeing my hands, but you're going to see me when I scroll, so that's just where we're at in life, unless, can I shimmy you guys? No, that didn't work. Whatever. You guys just see my hands. Sorry, they don't look good today. I didn't paint my nails. So, Parisian cities are weird. I knew this from taking French in high school and a little bit in college. Parisian cities are set up weird, because they're kind of like chunks that go out in a circle. It's all centered, and then it kind of goes around out. The problem is they're called arrondissements. I don't know how to say that word anymore. It's a French word. They're kind of like districts is the best way to describe it. So Villeneuve-sur-Gravois was the second district, and it's the smallest one in Paris, but apparently the most dynamic. It was developed around ancient roads that linked Paris to other provinces, and the area has 163 protected monuments and buildings. So cool, pretty historical. The area is now called the Quartier de Bonne Nouvelle, which was developed during the Middle Ages along the wall of Philip II Augustus, which is King Philip II of France, which it's also built along the oldest wall in the city of Paris. The Quartier de Bonne Nouvelle was known for being the kingdom of ne'er-do-wells, i.e. lawbreakers. It was kind of just where trouble went to be. It was a questionable area at best. Apparently there's a hill there called the Butte de Bonne Nouvelle, but in every article I tried to read about that one was in French, and I don't speak French, and I wasn't about to go down that path of let's type that into Google Translate and then try to figure out if that's actually real words, so skip that part. I figured it wasn't that important to what we're going to talk about, getting a little off topic, the interesting part of Butte de Bon Nouvelle is that it's made out of trash. It's a hill in France that was built because it has trash underneath it, and like being from Cleveland and of Lake Erie, like relatable. So, yeah, or waste, depending how you interpret it, trash. So back in Catherine Dechet's time is what I'm getting at, is it was called Villeneuve-sur-Gravois. It's not called that anymore, but you can still basically go there. So, our girl Catherine married a man named Antoine Monvoisin, who was a jeweler and a silk merchant. He had a shop in Pont Marie in Paris, and I had to Google this too. Pont Marie is a bridge that crosses the Seine in Paris. There's a ton of bridges, but this was one of the bigger ones. It's one of the oldest bridges in Paris and was completed in 1635. Back then, though, there were houses built on top of the bridge, and there was one time where a big flood came through and it ruined all the houses and actually killed, in 1658, it killed 60 people and shut down all those houses. So the thing is why would you build a house on a bridge? Like, that seems kind of like a silly idea. The bridge and the houses were all rebuilt after that massive flood, but it wasn't until 1740 that France was like, don't stop rebuilding houses on bridges. That's not like a thing. Don't do it. And then in 1788, houses were forbidden to be built on bridges entirely. So no, that used to be a thing, that people used to build houses and businesses on bridges until, at least in France, until 1788, when they were like, this is a horrible idea, you should stop doing that. So that's not a thing anymore. You can't do that. So at some point, possibly during the flood, I presume, Antoine's dream becomes a sham. He goes bankrupt. He can't afford his business anymore, and he goes bankrupt. At this point, Catherine supported her family by practicing chiromancy, which is palm reading, and face reading. From my understanding, face reading is just like palm reading, like reading the lines of your face and determining stuff about a person's character based on facial attributes. So she was really big on that. She was good at it, apparently. So Catherine was not only your average fortune teller, she was also a midwife, which at some point turned into her helping people have abortions. Her clients included wealthy members of aristocracy, or I feel like that's not pronounced right. She had a network of abortion providers that worked for her. They would receive the clients from La Voisin, who would refer them, but she took a major cut of the cost. So she's like, I'm referring you to this guy, give me a whole bunch of money, and then he'll charge you too, but like, give me the money. So by late 1660, she became known as La Voisin, which stands for neighbor in French. That literally translates to neighbor. I don't know why. I mean, her last name was Monvoisin, which would probably be my neighbor. So now she's the neighbor. I don't know if that's like some code or something, but she was called La Voisin. She was wealthy and a famous fortune teller who had clients among the highest aristocracy of France. So she lived in Villeneuve-sur-Gravois, took clients during the day, and entered the Parisian elite in her garden, or she entertained the Parisian elite in her garden at night. So she was a big deal. She had friends in the highest, and they had lists of, you could look who she was connected to, but like, it was too many people, and like, no, I'm not going down that rabbit hole. She later talked about her job as a fortune teller, saying that she had simply used the gift God had given her, and she said she'd been taught how to tell fortunes at 9, and once her husband ruined himself financially, her skill came in handy. She studied the modern methods at the time of palm reading, and she spent a lot of money to give herself the air of a reputable psychic, such as buying a very nice velvet robe that had golden eagles kind of all over it to perform in. So she spent a lot of money and a lot of time like making herself look credible. In 1665, 1666-ish, she was questioned by the Congregation of the Mission about her divination. She apparently gave a good enough defense and was allowed to continue her business as a fortune teller after that point. During her activity as a fortune teller, she noticed similarities among her clients about their future. Almost all of them wanted someone to fall in love with them. They wanted someone to die so they could inherit money, or that their spouses would die so that they could marry somebody else. Like, those are the three things that she wanted, that people came to her saying, like, this is what I want to happen. So, seeing the money route here, she started coming up with like aphrodisiacs and potions for these people. So for those clients that wished someone to fall in love with them, she had powders. There were love powders such as bones of toads, the teeth of moles, the Spanish fly, iron filings, human blood, and mummy, which is the dust of human remains. So she would like concoct these love powders for people. Her business, like I said, had gone from just telling people fortunes to like selling people magical objects and potions. And she was also doing these things called black masses for people, and that was kind of a thing. And so I had mentioned that when I first googled black masses, I accidentally typed in back masses, and I was very confused. I don't recommend you Google back masses because it's not good for you. But black masses take the Catholic Mass and invert it to mock the Catholic celebration. There's a whole bunch of ins and outs to it, but that doesn't have to do anything with our overall story. Basically, it's a ritual you do backwards to basically shun the Catholic celebration. So they do it backwards. In her black masses, though, she arranged for clients, so they would pay her. And this is something that I read, and I don't know for sure if this is how hers went, but this is kind of like maybe this is how it happened. The client would pray to Satan for their wish to come true, and during some of these, a woman performed as an altar, which a bowl was placed, a baby was held above the bowl, and the blood of the baby was poured into the bowl. Whether the baby was actually killed for this ritual, or if the baby was already dead by natural causes, such as being a stillborn, like, it's all over the place, they don't know, but they do know that in some cases, like, there was a baby sacrificed, one way or the other. She sold magical potions, amulets, and rituals, and she also dabbled in poisons. That's where the issue comes in, is she's dabbling in poisons. So the art of poisoning, which is what it's called, was a regular practice by then and had apparently been perfected by a woman named Aqua Tofana, who was a professional female poisoner in Italy. She had mastered the art a few decades before La Voisin became around. She actually came up with her famous poison called Aqua Tofana, which was named after her in 1632. So that's right around the time that Aqua Tofana came about. The mixture was basically known, but not sure about the blending process. It was a colorless, tasteless liquid that would easily be mixed with water or wine and served during meals. It was a strong poison, and it had arsenic, lead, and possibly belladonna in it to work so well. It was a really strong, really good poison that was effective at killing people. Tofana made good business over 50 years with selling her large production. So she employed several people and her children to make the Aqua Tofana and sell it. Catherine herself had a network of apothecaries around selling her goods, but apparently some notable people had immunities to them, so it's been suggested that maybe Catherine's poisons weren't that good. There was a princess, I think, that Catherine had tried to poison and it didn't work, and she had an immunity or something like that. So the whole thing was like maybe she was like a wannabe Jana Tofana, and she just like wasn't good enough to be her. I'm not sure. Yes. So she regularly went to church, but she practiced Jansenism, which is a movement that emphasized the original sin. So meaning humans are constant sinners since Adam and Eve, on human depravity. So every person born in the world is enslaved to the service of sin as their fallen nature, and they believe the necessity of divine grace and predestination. All of this was a distinct movement away from the Catholic Church. So for Catherine, this isn't particularly surprising, especially if she's having these black masses and like kind of doing her own thing and like studying more or less witchcraft. For her to not be Catholic is not surprising to me at all, that she was going to a different type of church. I believe that wholeheartedly. So she raked in so much cash that she was able to support her family of 6. So it was Catherine herself, her husband, her mother, and her children. And on the side, she was known to have at least 6 lovers. I kind of wrote their names down, but it's not really important. The executioner, André Guillaume, Monsieur Latour, who was a vicomte, the Count de la Bâtie, who was an alchemist, Blessis, who was an architect, and, Fauchette was an architect, and then she had a magician boyfriend named, Adam Lesage. Cool. So, it all seems a lot to keep straight, and once Adam, who was the magician tried to get her to kill her husband, and she agreed and almost went through with it, but changed her mind before she did anything. So she never killed her husband. She was interested in science and alchemy, which alchemy actually was kind of a real science. It was the forerunner before chemistry. It was basically the transformation of matter. It's like we can transform this matter into something else. So without alchemy, there wouldn't be chemistry. So she funded research avidly, and she even got swindled on a few occasions from con artists, and she was also known to suffer alcoholism. That's kind of an important thing that we'll get to later. Our girl Catherine had a rival, as well, as all good psychics do. She had a rival, and her name was Marie Bosse. She was also a French poisoner, a fortune teller, and an alleged witch. She was a widow of a horse trader and one of the most successful fortune tellers in Paris. Off the record, she was a poisoner who would give people poisons if they wanted to kill somebody, but she wasn't as from my understanding, they were equally prominent, but they were known for different things. Like, Marie Bosse was like, I'm a fortune teller, this is my jam, I sell poisons on the side. Where Catherine Monvoisin, like Lavoisin, kind of got a little more into like, I'm going to sell you potions, I'm going to sell you poisons, I'm going to sell you these things to get you things. You know, they had like different niches, but they were competitive. So Marie Bosse knew about Lavoisin's abortion practice. She tried to turn her in for it. Marie said that the later termed fetuses were burned in the furnace of Lavoisin's homes or buried in the gardens. But at the time, Louis XIV said he wasn't concerned with the abortion part of Lavoisin's like wrongdoings, and this therefore is the least known part of her business, which really means that Marie Bosse's they could be lies. Like, she was just trying to get her rival out of the market. So Catherine is living her life, telling fortunes and giving people amulets. She had a lucrative profession and lived a very lavish life. It seems like she really made it. And it's not that, I wrote here, it's not that she gets greedy, but now that I understand the situation a little more, she was trying to be helpful, is kind of her downfall. I mean, helpful in Catherine's way, which is a different breed of helpful, but helpful nonetheless. So she's trying to help people out, and it kind of comes back to bite her in the ass. So Catherine gets a client named Madame de Montespan. Her real name is Francois Athanas de Rochechouart de Mortemart, Marquis of Montespan. And I didn't say any of that right, and I'm not saying it ever again. So we're not calling her that. She's important because she was the maîtresse en titre to King Louis XIV of France. That means that she was the chief mistress of the king. It was a semi-official position which came with its own apartments. You got paid, and you were like the king's headmistress. Like, you were cream of the crop of his mistresses. You had your own apartments. Like, the queen knew about you, and you were getting paid to like bang the king. Very important job. So if you look on Wikipedia of the phrase, a lot of kings use the title, and weirdly Louis XIV had 14 of these, and she was 8th on the list, but they're not in any particular order. So she was there from 1667 to 1691-ish. She was his maîtresse en titre. There's a lot of overlap though, so I'm assuming like the king had more than one. Like, he was allowed to have more. It wasn't just like a one person. Like, you could have more than one of those. She gave him 7 children, and she had been born into one of the most old noble families in France, and for some she was referred to as the true Queen of France because of her influence during court at the time. So she had a certain charm and finesse and charisma that like the king ate up. He loved her. And some people do say that he loved her more than his own queen. So her so-called reign started when they danced together at a ball in 1667. That's how this whole kind of thing happened. So Catherine and Madame de Montespan knew each other because of it was alleged that Madame de Montespan hired Lavoisin to have a black mass in order to win the love of the king. So before she became the maîtresse en titre, she just like really wanted to be that. So that was like her goal. She's like, that's where my eyes on the prize. I want to be that person. So she did a black mass allegedly in 1667 to get the love of the king, and then that was when the dance happened. So it worked, if you think so. Yes. But then, so here's the issue. Anytime the Madame de Montespan had an issue with Louis, she would go back to Monvoisin. So anytime she saw something was going wrong and they had a fight, she'd go back and get more love potions for the king. Like, that was her goal. Because she wanted to maintain her position. In 1673, the king's interest in Madame de Montespan started to drift. So she went to Monvoisin and did a series of black masses, and she was given aphrodisiacs to use on the king, which kind of stifled that movement, because in 1677, Montespan made it clear that if the king should abandon her, she would have him killed. Which seems really drastic, but okay. By 1679, King Louis started a relationship with Angelique de Fontanges. Madame de Montespan told Monvoisin she wanted the king and Angelique killed. Monvoisin was difficult to persuade, but eventually agreed and constructed a plan to kill them. She had other poisoners in her plot as well, and the plan was to murder the king by poisoning a petition and delivering it to him, like, at court. On March 5th, 1679, Monvoisin goes to the royal court to deliver the petition, but there were too many petitioners, and the king did not take any of their petitions. So the petition was ultimately burned, and a new plan was set to take place. So, a little backstory on why this kind of gets blown out of proportion. The king's sister-in-law, Henrietta of England, died in 1670 because, the death was ruled as a poison. Now it was ruled it was probably gastroenteritis, but back at the time, people were really scared about poisoning, because poisoning was happening all over the place. People were getting poisoned left and right, because people were getting good at it. That's why they had, like, poison testers for kings, because if you were royal and you had enough money, people were probably going to try to poison you to either inherit your money or inherit your money. So, poisoning was a big deal, and they very much thought people thought that it was poisoning. And they're also, in 1676, only 3 years before these events were kind of happening, poisoners had just been executed. There was a whole bunch of trials going on. So it's interesting to see that this kind of goes the way it does, because obviously people were sick of getting poisoned. So they're like, we need to kind of nip this in the bud and handle our situation. So, in 1677, a fortune teller named Magdalene de Lagrange was arrested for poisoning, and during her questioning claimed that she had information of high importance crimes. Then, Marie Bosse and Marie Vigoureux were arrested in 1679. This is where this all goes down. Magdalene de Lagrange kind of ruined it for everybody, because she tried to get herself, I'm assuming she didn't want to be executed, so she's like, listen, don't kill me, I'll tell you everything you need to know. So she throws Marie Bosse and Marie Vigoureux underneath the bus. Like, they're like, peace, catch you later. You're out of this bucket, because I'm turning you in. So, Bosse had attended a party held by Marie Vigoureux, and during the party she became drunk and boasted freely that she had become so wealthy by selling deadly poisons to members of the aristocracy that she would be able to retire soon. And at the time, Paris police was investigating poison sales in Paris. Obviously, I just told you that story. A guest at the party, the lawyer Maître Perrin, reported the conversation to police, and the police sent the wife of a police officer to Bosse to ask for poison to murder her husband, and Bosse provided her with what proved to be deadly poison. So I guess Marie Bosse kind of threw herself under the bus as well, bragging about these things, but the whole thing is that there's a chain reaction going on here, because people are getting sick of getting poisoned. Chain reaction, like, we need to fucking stop this. So, on the morning of January 4th, 1679, Marie Bosse was arrested with her daughter and both of her sons. So, yeah. The family was arrested, and they were found... Oh, it's talking about incest. I copied this because I kind of wanted to mention it, but I'm not actually going to read it. When she was arrested, they were like, oh, they're doing incest and all kinds of weird shit. Whether that's real or not, I don't know, because they didn't like her. She was a witch, whatever. Marie Vigoureux was arrested the same day and found to have close ties to the family, and she had sexual relationships with everybody in Marie Bosse's family. Once again, I doubt that's true. It may be, but I don't know if it's just slander because they were witches. Marie Vigoureux died during interrogation under torture on May 9th, 1679. Marie Bosse was condemned to death by burning and executed in Paris on May 8th, 1679. Her children and associates were also sentenced to death. So they're taking this very fucking seriously. Their confessions revealed that the illegal sale of poison in the capital was handled by a network of fortune tellers, and this leads to the arrest of Monvoisin and the opening of the infamous poison affair. That's what this whole thing is called. It's called the Poison Affair. Because King Louis is sick of this shit, and he's like, we're taking out every poison seller that we can find. You're going down. Like a massive drug bust. Like, we're taking everybody out. If you've even been associated with someone selling poison, we're killing you. Because, like, you're done. So on March 12th, 1969, Monvoisin was arrested outside Notre Dame de Bonne Nouvelle after having heard Mass. On December 27th, 1679, Louis XIV issued an order that the whole network should be exterminated by all methods, regardless of rank, sex, or age. Anyone associated with the network was to be arrested and executed. This means children and anybody connected to the royal court. Anybody who had ever dabbled in poisoning ever was about to get executed if you were caught. So, sucks to suck, you shouldn't have been poisoning people. But this is a bad time, because now you're getting into, like, Salem witch trial bullshit, where, like, if you didn't like somebody, you could just throw them under the bus and say, like, oh, well, so-and-so's a witch, and then you watch that person die, because that's how the whole Salem witch trial thing got blown. I read a book about it. It was a great book. But people, if you had an argument over land, and you're like, my fucking neighbor and I have been arguing over this square foot of land for the last 10 years, you'd be like, well, he is totally a witch, and then you get to keep your land. See? People were using this hype, this hysteria, to throw people that they didn't like under the bus. So with how many people get arrested and killed during this, I'm not surprised if, like, half of them actually weren't even involved and they were just disliked by other people. And that's another reason why, so I mentioned earlier that Monvoisin was not a good poisoner. She's actually a pretty shitty poisoner because people didn't die when they poisoned her. I just wonder if, like, she wasn't even good at it, or if she wasn't even in the business and she was just, like, mistaken to be in the business, and she was just not poisoning people, but, like, doing these black masses, and that's why, like, she's a witch, so we just need to kill her. I don't know. I wonder if some of this just got blown out of proportion. I'm assuming it probably did. So, unlike Marie Bosse and Marie Vigoureux, Catherine was not tortured, although the interrogators were given permission to do so. But the issue here is that they knew she was an alcoholic. So instead of beating the information out of her, they just got her hammered drunk. They were keeping her really highly intoxicated during all of her interviews, hoping that would keep her the most honest. During interrogation, she said that all of her clients that needed poison, she had referred them to Marie Bosse. Like, that was her thing. She's like, no, I never actually poisoned them. I just gave them to Marie Bosse. She said that she didn't sell poisons, but eventually, though, she did admit to having sold poisons and magical services to several members of the royal court, and also described the development of her career, which includes Madame de Montespan. So Catherine left out meeting and serving Madame Montespan. She gets thrown in the bus eventually, but sorry to spoil that surprise for you. She never talked about anything they did, fearing that she would be executed for regicide, because they did have the plan to kind of kill the king and Angelique, so she never talked about that part. Because at this point, I still think Catherine Monvoisin didn't think she was going to get executed. I thought maybe she was thinking, like, if I throw enough people under the bus, like, maybe I can keep myself safe too, but wrong. It's not what happens. There's no happy ending to the story. Oh, there is a little bit, like a tiny bit of a happy ending. It's still kind of sad, though. Her list of clients, the arranging of the black masses, her connection to Montespan, and the murder attempt on the king were not revealed until after Monvoisin's death. Her daughter and her other associates kind of threw it out, I guess. She denied the claims of using her ovens to burn the bones of infants that were too large for the grave area around her garden. And she also she denied using syringes to do any type of abortion. She said she never did that. It's hard to tell. On February 17th, 1680, Catherine Monvoisin was convicted of witchcraft and her sentence was to be executed by burning. I don't know why that was so hard to get out. She was executed in public at Place de Grève, which is now the Place de l'Hôtel de Ville, on February 22nd, 1680. On her way to the execution, she pushed away the priest, and when she was tied to the stake, she desperately pushed away the hay that was piled around her, so she was kicking it out of the way. It is interesting to note that Angelique, the woman who Madame de Montespan was so worried about, died of natural causes during childbirth on June 28th, 1681. She was 19 years old. This fueled further arrests because there was a suspect at the time that she had been poisoned, especially involving the plan with the king and her, but she did die of natural causes anyways. So if Madame de Montespan had just waited a fucking second, like, it wouldn't have been an issue. She was just, I mean, well, I guess you would have never known that, but maybe don't be so jealous. How about that? Okay, so the poison affair. The infamous poison affair implicated 442 suspects, 367 orders of arrest were issued, of which 218 were carried out. 218 people got arrested. Of the condemned, 36 people were executed, 5 were sentenced to the galleys, and 23 to exile. This excludes those who died in custody by torture or suicide. Additionally, many accused were never brought to trial but placed outside of the justice system and imprisoned for life by a lettre de cachet, which I looked that up. It is letters signed by the King of France, countersigned by one of his ministers, and enclosed with a royal seal. These contain orders directly from the king to enforce arbitrary penal actions that could not be appealed. So you would basically get a letter from the king that was like, you're going to prison for the rest of your life, no court, no trial, no nothing. The king said so. Subject was imprisoned without trial and without an opportunity of defense. In a state prison or ordinary jail, the confinement in a convent or the General Hospital of Paris, you could get transported to the colonies, or expelled from the realm altogether. You could just be, like, exiled. They were usually used against drunkards, troublemakers, prostitutes, squanderers, or of family fortune, or insane persons, but in this case, witches, and I didn't mean to say prostitutes, I meant to say sex workers, but I copied that sentence from Wikipedia, so sorry. Okay. Of the people who were condemned to perpetual imprisonment, 6 women were imprisoned and 18 men. There are a lot of people imprisoned over different places. Like this, I don't know how to do math, so never mind. I was going to add that up for you. A lot of people, they were like, here's your letter, go to prison somewhere, fuck off, you're involved. So you might be wondering what happened to our girl, Madame de Montespan. And this is kind of like the saddish, but kind of happy ending, because you have to look for the hope at some point of this. She retired to a convent in Paris in 1691. She was 51 years old. Because she left quietly, she was given a pension of $500,000, and the king made her father, or 500,000 francs, sorry. The king made her father a governor, and her sister the abbess of a wealthy monastery, and treated them well. In her long retirement, Madame de Montespan donated vast sums to hospitals and charities. And like I said, because she left quietly and just kind of didn't have a fuss, and the king must have liked her enough that he was like, just get the fuck out and, like, shoo away and I won't kill you, basically. Be quiet about it and, like, just kind of live your life in a convent, which she did. Madame de Montespan lived the rest of her life in severe penance. She died on May 27th, 1707 at 66 years old. She had been ill for some time before her death, so it wasn't surprising. Unfortunately, though, her children were absolutely forbade by the king to wear mourning for her, so she was just kind of exiled to a convent, hushed under the rug, and her children were not allowed to publicly mourn for her, which is kind of sad, but she didn't get exiled. She left quietly. She left on her own. And she lived her life, whether it was a happy one or not, I'm not sure, but she lived her life and she wasn't burned alive. So I guess what else could you ask for? That's like the happiest ending you were going to get out of the situation. So that was this week's, the 15th Patron exclusive episode. This one was a lot of fun to research, so I think you're going to be getting more like this. I love old crimes. So I'll see you guys on the first of the month.